Awesome. All right. Well, great to see you again, Sharon and Glenn. How are you both?
I'm good, thanks.
Keeping warm?
Keeping warm, yeah. And dry.
Yeah, I wish I could say yes, but I've moved south, so it's a bit colder, right?
Yeah. Well, tell us about that, Glenn, because it has been a while. Last time we spoke, last time we recorded, you were in Nelson, I think, but moved back to Christchurch.
Yeah, so we had a block of land near Motueka, and we were going to build. And going through that whole process, we kind of realised how much we missed our daughters and family. So we actually sold that block of land, and we moved south again. So yeah, it could say gypsy, but it was 5.5 years. So
Yeah.
And the weather was superb up there.
Yep.
Shout out to the weather of that area.
I'm looking forward to going to Nelson. We're heading that way in a few weeks from now, 23rd of September. We're doing an energy modelling workshop there, the one that we've been doing around the country, and really looking forward to it because I've been to Nelson for a while. I've been chatting to Nathan Edmonston, and he's sort of reaching out to some of the network. I think they're having a festival of architecture there coming up in September. So it'll be good to see, because I know that there is. I mean, what was your sense of the building and sort of architecture scene while you were there, Glenn, in that 5 years? Because I think of Nelson as being pretty progressive.
Yeah, so same, but I found it a little more sluggish than I would have expected around high performance. And there's still a few practitioners of passive solar.
Yes.
And obviously
we don't like passive solar.
It's a part of the mix of success, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But we have moved a little bit on towards other, insulation is important, air tightness, so it kind of was a little bit back in time, but there's still people like Nathan and Lenny Basham doing good stuff.
Yeah.
So plus, plenty of people that would like to be doing more of it, but I think there's potential.
Yeah. I shouldn't say we don't like passive solar as opposed to passive house. I think there's a lot of overlap, but I think air tightness is probably one of the big differences between passive solar and passive house.
I touch on passive solar actually in my blog for September, and just flag it, because I think if you look at it in isolation, it's not a whole solution.
No.
It needs balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
is that coming up,
that's
Sharon?
the way to do. Yeah, so that'll be out on the website and on social media after the 1st of September.
Good timing.
Yeah, I know.
Because what have you been up to been a while, but what have you been up to, Sharon?
Lots. Well, I caught up with you briefly at the Passive House conference the end of July, which was just great fun. That's my new favourite conference. It's just a really friendly, collaborative environment, which was a lot of fun for 2 days. So that was a highlight of the month.
And how's Waikato?
Waikato's good. Yeah, trucks along. It does truck along. So it's still busy, I'm never idle, never sitting on my hands. So yeah.
Can you talk about any of the projects that you're working on at the moment?
Well, I can. Some of them not so much architectural, but I'm developing, my small smart spaces architectural design range. So met some really cool builders that were interested in it. So that's growing. I'm really super excited and evolving. It's always more work, and it always evolves in ways I don't expect. But it's just trying to find a way to get passive house and homestay projects out easily to everyday people. And this, I keep saying this is in development. It's on my to-do list, is starting my own podcast for my book, which is now published, Babe, Let's Build a House. So
wait, what? You've published a book?
I have published a book.
I didn't know about this.
Did you not know about this?
Oh, here it comes.
She has props.
Yeah, I have props. Here we go. There we go. There it is.
Very nice.
in Harley.
Nice.
So
That's
just a
good name.
comprehensive guide right from the start to the end for a client, covering everything. Not necessarily stuff that builders are involved in, not necessarily stuff that architects and designers are involved in. You know, types of fees, types of contracts, types of loans, selecting a site, the difference between group home builders and bespoke architecture and all the other options out there. Questions to ask people, who to speak to first. There's a couple of checklists in there just to help people on their journey. Because I think a lot of people think that it's either bespoke and that's something that might not apply to them, or it's just a group home builder, and it's just making people more informed as to what their options are and what they need to consider, and just try and take the stress and overwhelm out of, and the misconceptions about the whole process. So, yeah.
I feel like we could do
I
feel like we could do a whole episode on that, but I have to ask you about the title, Babe.
The title.
Build a House. Does it have advice on how to maintain a relationship during a build?
There is a chapter on psychology, but no, not couples therapy. So it does dive into what kind of client you are and just addressing, how you go through the process and what you need to support yourself. But no, I stopped at marriage counselling, Matt.
Nice.
Didn't want to overstep, Sharon.
Well,
I didn't want to overstep, Matt. Too far away from architecture, Glenn.
We'll leave that for Kevin McLeod.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's exciting. I didn't realise you'd been doing that amongst all the other stuff that you've been working on, Sharon. That's a fantastic achievement.
Oh, thank you.
Where will people be able to get that?
So you can just hop on my website, smartlivingspaces.nz. There's a tab, Babe, Let's Build a House, and you can purchase an e-copy or a hard copy, and the checklists are also there if you just want the checklists to print off and use. So yeah.
That sounds really cool. I think that particularly how to talk to group home builders is a really valuable thing. We tried to do that with some of the resources at the Green Building Council as well with Homestar, and because I've thought about that quite a lot, and I think there's this perception out there that if you're building a new home, it's going to be code compliant. So it's going to be signed off by the council. There's a good chance that it's going to have some sort of guarantee, whether it's a master builder's guarantee, which is apparently 10 years, or certified builders got their own version of a warranty or guarantee. There's all these and then there might be some other check thing or warranty, guarantee from the builder. And you're spending $1 million plus. It kind of feels, I think, like there's a lot of guarantee there. But still there's this massive gap between what is likely to be delivered if it's just code compliant and what customer expectations are. And I'm having this conversation quite regularly because people keep talking about what the space that I'm in as quote unquote high performance. And I'm just like, no, I'm not, most of my time is not spent on high performance. It's more on trying to bridge the gap with the code and just actually delivering to expectations, which seems like a really low bar, but I think that's kind of reality. So I think having that type of checklist kind of thing of these are the specific things that you need to ask your builder is super valuable.
Yeah, no, there's a questions to ask your builder. There is a chapter on what is Passive House, and there is a chapter on what is Homestar. So New Zealand Green Building Council made it in here. Yeah, just explaining to people what all these things are, hopefully in layperson's terms. Because I think we're very good at talking technical stuff, and that doesn't help people.
Yeah, and I think
it supports industry, but not the general public.
Yeah. No, all good. Yep. All right. Well, we've got I've suggested to you guys a few topics for us to cover off tonight. And we may not get through them all. We'll see how we go. First of all, I think we should talk about Chris Penk because he's been in the news recently, and as his colleague Chris Bishop, who's often in the news, but is primarily talking about social housing and some really interesting stuff kind of coming out of that space, which I'm always interested to look at. Overheating is a perpetual issue, and I think it will be for some time to come, which sounds a bit weird in the middle of winter, and we're talking about keeping warm right now. But I think it is going to be a bit of an issue. And then some other policy changes coming up. Of course, H1 changes towards the end of this year. Seems like years, because it has been years that we've been talking about it. But it's finally...
round.
Yeah. Round and round.
We talked about this last time.
There's also another change coming, which is very closely related, which is consultation on NZS 3604. So quite a lot there. Let's jump in. Did you guys catch the attempted coup last week of the National Party?
Yeah, it's hard to miss, wasn't it?
Hard to miss. Although I think Sharon might have missed it. I don't know if you pay attention to politics all that much.
I do to a degree, but no, I was too busy. So sorry. Yeah. I heard about it.
It is what it is. This is not a political show, but I mention it because the one thing I heard about Chris Penk from everyone that has interacted with him was his ability to listen. And which is noticeable from a politician, and he has been on. Simon Cade has interviewed him. I know he's appeared on many other shows and podcasts in the building industry, and he just came across, I think, quite genuinely as a good listener, and that was also proven in his action around H1, and he heard some things, and then he was told some other things, and then changed direction on that somewhat. He also told us when he came to our conference, possibly the year before last, that having done H1, or at least put that in motion, he was very aware of the need to really look at ventilation, and had indicated that looking at G4 and potentially E3 was going to be the next priority. And then more recently suggested a change to the process of updating the building code and implementing a 3-year review cycle, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, because it meant that there would be a delay now for any more changes, but it does introduce a regular cycle of changes rather than a fairly ad hoc process, which is what we've had before. And we went for a long period of time without any updates to the installation requirements. So he was a busy man, got a lot done, and I thought it was just worth mentioning now that his portfolios have been transferred to Simon Watts. And just listing off a few other things that Penk was active on was Building Amendment Bill reforms. Liability changes, so he was really big on proportional liability, and that's something that a lot of us have been talking about for a long time. Building consent reform, he has made changes to the building research levy, and also the other big topic is importing foreign products and different exemptions for foreign products. So it's quite a lot in there. Bit of a mixed bag. Any thoughts on Chris Penk's legacy?
Yeah, I thought he was quite, like you sort of covered at the beginning, I thought he was fairly interactive at the beginning.
Yeah.
So he was even on LinkedIn and commenting.
It's pretty active.
Could be a cauldron of opinion.
Yep.
But he was discussing things, so I thought that was a good start. And then I think potentially he was quite surprised by the level of knowledge and opinion from the private sector around insulation. And eventually he took that on, I believe. And because it was suggesting possibly use resources rather than maybe talk to one random builder in Tauranga. So
Yeah.
in the first instance, that got trotted out. And so then I think, that's cause and effect. You understand how these things work. But I think one of the main problems is that, people are thrown into an area that's not their, it's not their game. It's not their wheelhouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so I was impressed about that.
Yeah. Which I think is fine if you're willing to listen and quickly identify the right people to listen to at the appropriate level. And I think he did that, which is quite special in a politician. And he had competing interests that he was juggling. So I guess we'll see. I mean, when it came out, I was disappointed because people have spoken positively of him in the building industry, mostly. I guess in real terms, I wasn't expecting much to change between now and the election anyway. So I don't think it's going to have massive impact other than, the election will obviously be the bigger impact depending on the outcome of that. So there are other things already now in motion, particularly around the proportional liability and foreign products and that funding changes, which will mostly impact brands really. But I guess we'll see how things pan out after the election, which is a good reminder that everyone needs to make sure they check their registration because you can't just rock up and vote this year.
Mine arrived in the mail today.
Nice.
Two things on that though. I thought that MB was going to roll out changes to the building code every year. Wasn't that something that we were establishing and we were expecting an update every November?
I'll have to check the facts on that. I know that there are often minor changes that MB does, make sort of tweaks on things. The framework of the 3-year cycle is for more fundamental changes, which would include, complete rewrites of a building code clause, anything that needs to go to a, right up to Parliament basically, and have a debate over, and then essentially get signed off by a minister, is a much more fundamental change.
Okay.
And so
another thing about G. I'm sorry, keep going.
Well, those sorts of things, the changes that I think we would like to see around G, actually making G4 effective and also making E3 internal moisture effective, they are fairly fundamental. They require fairly fundamental rewrites of those clauses, which would then need to go not just up through a debate and sign off for the minister, but prior to that, they would need to go to consultation. So that's quite a lengthy process because drafts have to be created. Then there has to be a consultation period, and then there has to be a feedback and allowing for that feedback to be written into the original draft, and then it gets debated. So 3 years sounds like a long time, but it's actually, it kind of takes that long. And in fact, there's recent conversations that I've had with some of the senior building scientists at brands saying that for any of those fundamental changes now, we've probably missed the boat for 2028 already. Unless we move very, very quickly as an industry, and they've kind of asked for that, to say if we mobilise quickly now, we might be able to get something happening to get into that 2028 cycle. Otherwise, it'll be 2031.
Well, G4 was talked about in brand seminars that I attended 10, 12 years ago as being overhauled. So it's just a pity that it's been talked about a lot by the scientists and still is stagnant.
Yes.
I think I think, talking about 2028, I think actually we're getting failures already in houses. So we're getting condensation build up in roof spaces, mold in walls. It's happening now. So
it is.
I'm sort of interested in the level that we need to get to before it drives change. And if
catastrophic failure.
In that. Yeah. What's it going to take?
Yeah, it is, and I've thought about that as well. And if we consider that we're back up to about 40,000 building consent applications per annum right now. So you spread that out over 3 years, that's 120,000 houses potentially being built. You know, even if 80%, 90% of those actually get built, you still got over 100,000 houses. That's 100,000 households, potentially 200,000 people living in less than ideal conditions, and that's locking in that a whole another 50 years worth of houses. So yeah, every year we delay those changes, that it locks in a lot more people. And yeah, I wonder that as well, Glenn, when we hear about and I think this is the perpetual issue, that a lot of these chronic issues that take a long time to present themselves and aren't necessarily a catastrophic failure that make the headline, but it's that mold that's just growing slowly over periods of time and keeping people sick quietly, and then making a big negative impact and overloading our hospitals and all the rest of it. But because it's not easy to point to a single incident or a single cause, it's really hard to point the finger.
Well,
we can point the finger.
These are new houses, right? Not just the old dumps.
No, absolutely, and that's it. And I've got like loads of photos that I show whenever I get the chance of condensation on brand new window frames and houses that are overheating and got condensation. But that's the condensation that we can see, and it's often the condensation that we can't see that's going to be causing the problem. Just like in the leaky building crisis, that people like Thomas van Ramsdonk have been talking about leaky building 2.0 for decades already. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
The keynote speaker at the Passive House conference pulled up a slide. I just had to take a picture of it. It was colour coordinated for the highest asthma rates in the world.
Yeah.
And New Zealand was the darkest.
Right up there.
Number one.
Number one. I thought we were number two, but we've got gold
close
now.
Enough. It was certainly the darkest patch on the, New Zealand tends to fall off the map on some maps. Yeah. Well, you could clearly see it on this one. So
yeah,
it was embarrassing. It was really embarrassing.
Yeah.
And this is pointed out by an Irish architect,
Yeah.
So this is not a New Zealand secret.
I guess it is easy to get a bit down about all that. One of the things that we have been told from some of the so brands, when they have the chance, they can advise MB. MB are the ones that actually make the changes to the code. But some of the scientists at brands have said that they would like industry to make more noise about all this stuff, because the more noise that we make, then that gives them a bit more license to direct the research and then produce more data, and then that loads up MB with more of a prerogative to actually make the change. And then the more noise that is coming from industry, as we saw with conversations with Minister Penk, that makes it easier for a minister to take action. If the minister knows that it's either happening already or it's going to be accepted by a reasonable portion of the industry, that makes law change much easier. So it kind of flips law change on its head. So rather than us waiting for the law to change, we kind of it's a bit of cliche, but kind of need to be the change that we want to see, and wag the dog a little bit.
You almost need a competition to see who can send in the worst photo.
yeah, and I because the thing is that we all kind of know, and this frustrates me with research, we don't necessarily need more research to prove or to understand the problem. We understand the problem, we know what the solutions are, but the right research is useful for just loading up the evidence more and more in a quantitative way. Because that's, to your point, Glenda, because we don't have that catastrophic event, we have to fall back on quantitative data, and we've got plenty of anecdotal evidence, but we need quantitative data, which comes from research.
Yeah, and I guess that's the other thing is some companies won't be advertising the fact that they've got soppy roof spaces, right?
In fact, I do know of some companies who have very, very quietly fixed that problem because it's a reputational risk for them. And even though they were technically correct as far as the building building code, there are instances I know of where they've quietly gone and replaced a whole ceiling because of condensation forming in the roof, which is a massive issue. It's effectively, someone thought their roof was leaking, but it was condensation forming from the inside. So yeah, it's in the builder's interest to just sort of quietly fix that and not let it get out, because that's not going to be a great story, and it's not going to be good media coverage for them.
Well, as Sharon knows, it's not a lot of work, is it? It's not a lot of work, Sharon, to do it right. It's not a ton of money, particularly in the North Island, around avoiding those kind of things.
Well, it's also for the builders listening to this. Like, would your insurance pay out for that? Would you just suddenly it becomes a headache? So just make building better part of your practice. It'd be interesting to see what the Consumer Guarantees Act would say on that too, because it's quite a grey area.
That is a good question, because I know of homeowners who have tried to get some compensation or tried to get an issue of internal moisture resolved, and they tried going to the builder. They tried going to master builders, because it was a master builder, and there was in theory a 10-year guarantee, and they just got rejected every time because the building was code compliant, and also the insurance company said, well, there's no defect according to the law. So whether or not the builder could claim any insurance on that, I don't know, but I suspect it'd be a tough time. I think in the times where I know of them just going away and fixing it, it's more about reputational risk, and it's in their interest to just pay for it and kind of keep it out of the limelight. But it's incredibly disheartening for homeowners, and no one really wins apart from lawyers in the end.
No.
Same as leaky buildings.
Just to plug my blog, because it's really timely, I've got the 4 questions you should ask to see if your house is high performance. So if anyone from the public is listening to this and you don't know the questions to ask, so you don't have this issue, we talk about condensation as well. Yeah, because I think also homeowners and the general public need to ask the right questions.
Have you guys seen this guy's popped up on my social channels, BAS Renovations, BAS Renovations. He's a guy in Michigan who posts videos. I'll have to send a link to him. He's brilliant. They're so good. But one of the things that he does these great videos of showing how a house is put together. But one of the things it does is highlight just how much better the typical house in his case in Colorado, Michigan, how much better they're put together than the average New Zealand house. Because he talks about like sheathing, and this is how you put sheathing on, and sheathing in that context is kind of optional, because he's basically talking about rigid air barrier, and builders only do that if they absolutely have to. In here, there's a lot of areas where people just don't bother if they can just get away with essentially a piece of wrap, if they don't need it. But it's just standard practice over there. So I'll put a link to that because it's very cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I better move on because got a few things that I thought we might cover off. Mr. Bishop's been in the news as well this week. Another Chris. There seem to be a lot of Chris's around at the moment. Something that I pay attention to quite a lot is social housing. And I don't know if either of you follow this much, but there was a press release this week about new social and affordable homes. I don't know how you guys feel about social housing. I don't know if you work in this space. Sharon, you had a little bit to do with social housing or not?
I have. I did a homestay assessment for A Court Developments, which is social housing on
Yes.
Dominion Road, which was a fantastic community. It's a fantastic project. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that jump out to me from this. One is that there's a huge underlying need for more social and affordable housing. And there are a couple of things that this government has done very differently from the last government. So we had a lot of housing being built by Kāinga Ora in the previous government. The current coalition basically put a stop to that, but put more of an emphasis on delivery of community housing through community housing providers, the CHIPs. And this press release celebrated that a lot of housing has been delivered in the current term. I think the figure was around 8,000, which I take a little bit of issue with, because housing that's delivered today has very little to do with the current government. Or maybe some of it. It'll be the sort of the some of those houses might have been the very beginning of this term, but a lot of that would have been the end result of work from the previous government that was just in play, because it takes that long. So the number of houses is one issue. The other issue is the type of housing, and there's a big emphasis on the right houses in the right place. And I honestly don't know how I feel about this, because I feel like the need for affordable social housing is massive, and we just need a lot more houses. And it kind of minimises the issue a little bit by talking about the type of houses and the location of those houses. The big emphasis here is on smaller houses in the areas that they're needed, with a particular emphasis on single bedroom houses. Mm-hmm. Either of you guys got any thoughts on the need for single bedroom houses?
I think there needs to be more 1 and 2 bedroom social houses, to be honest, because we have a population that is increasingly single.
Yeah.
And the days of large families and that kind of dynamic as being predominant are over. So I do think the discussion about typology needs to happen, but you also need a mixed use. You can't ignore, especially when you're talking about Māori and Pacifica, they live very differently. Yeah. They're much more, for Europeans, yes, probably more 1 and 2 bedrooms, but certainly for Māori and Pacifica families, their family is their community. They live as more of a tribe, and that's a wonderful thing. So we need to talk about the typology fitting the culture.
Yeah.
But not let it only be about that.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think what you both say is correct. I think the key thing is how many units do we need for how many people? You could
about 20,000.
Yeah. So, and then what is the process, people? What is the process? You talk about, it's a red herring to talk about 1s and 2s, really. I mean, it is important, I think, but you kind of like, look over here, so that you're not looking over here. And the key thing is, I'd like to see local government get more involved. They've got land.
Yep.
They've got a lot of land. Currently, they're trying to move people out of the red zone in Christchurch, so they're looking to do that by February. The Christchurch City Council, they're making all the right noises about, we understand we've got an issue here and people are living there. It sort of starts going right back to the move on policy. Yeah. If we're moving desperate people on, we better have somewhere to put them.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's my take on it. But where are they going? So now they're hiding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they're hiding, because I had a good chat with somebody who was very apologetic about asking for a few dollars for a coffee. And he pointed out where he lives. And they're hiding. They're just hiding. So is that a society that we want to live in? Because I think we have this responsibility, and I've been thinking about this and talking to people about it, is we put this responsibility onto the government. So we've got to go right back to the mentality that we have. The government is supposedly the ones that are the safety net. Well, it ain't working, and people are dying on the streets. This represents a problem. And you posted something, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. You posted about those bags that they're looking to make.
Oh, I just saw that.
Oh,
this
they're
morning
buying them, Glenn.
Yeah,
they're buying them.
Rotary clubs are buying them. I had another post that I was going to do on LinkedIn today, and that when I saw that, I was just so angry when I saw it because, I was angry, but I was also, I take my hat off to those people. So, yeah, it's Rotary clubs that are essentially buying. They're sleeping bags, but they're a bit more than that. They're like a bivvy with a sort of a roll-up shelter sleeping bag.
What do you call those?
Did they buy them from Australia? I don't know.
Yeah, no. There's like a swag almost, eh?
Yeah. So amazing mahi that they're doing, and
totally.
It sucks that they have to be doing it because the fact that they're buying 1,000 of those to distribute around New Zealand, I think is kind of disgusting. The fact that there's a need that is that apparent, and that's the solution, is that a bunch of people in Rotary buy essentially sleeping bags to hand out to people to probably save lives or extend lives is just appalling. And, I find it very hard to hear them talk about, the fact that we don't want people living in motels and hotels when, if the alternative is living on the street and someone handing you a sleeping bag.
Yeah,
I think we've seen these problems with the housing crisis. I don't like using that word, but everyone seems to have their own little solution and own little pockets. Well, like the government, we'll give the private sector, we'll encourage them to provide social housing, and we'll get them to do that. And then we're not having a holistic conversation about the whole issue and game planning it moving forward. There's lots of little solutions that are working in isolation and actually probably working against each other.
Yeah. And it's often pitched as a cost-saving exercise, stopping waste, but ultimately we're all paying this. We're paying the price for either hospitals or prisons, basically. At this stage, and that's costing us as taxpayers. And I'd much rather be spending taxpayer money on actual decent housing.
That's costing us as a society by more than money,
Yeah.
It's not to say that it's not a massive problem, because it's housing's very difficult and very expensive. So what are they doing well in the world? What's working?
I'm going to just show you this. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's quite an amazing dashboard. So a lot of this this data is public. So there is a thing. This is the new mega ministry, MCERT, Ministry for Cities, Environment, Regions, and Transport. But they have a dashboard. So they've this wasn't theirs. They've taken it from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, which has been rolled into MCERT. And everything is here for people to see. We can see, here's the top line figure, 24,000. That is the people on the social housing register. That's a massive number of people.
That's the waiting list.
That's the waiting list, yeah. But there's an interesting thing about the waiting list is that, and I've heard Paul Gilbert from the Community Housing Association talk about this, that the waiting list can be a little bit deceptive, because and under Labor, it did go up. And part of the reason is a psychological reason why it goes up is that if when there's a feeling that people might get help, they ask for it. People sometimes take themselves off the register when there's just no hope. So the register coming down isn't necessarily on its own a very good measure of success, because it doesn't necessarily tell the full picture. It might just be that people just don't bother because the number of rejections of applicants has skyrocketed, and the number of grants being given has just completely plummeted. So a lot of people have sort of essentially deselected from that social housing register. But the other thing that's interesting on this dashboard is just looking at the number of social housing units being delivered, and you can look at this over a period of time, and in fact it goes right back to 2017. But if we just have a look at end of 2019, which is kind of after the before times, I was ready to see a massive change in so this is the delivery of social housing in New Zealand over that time. It's actually quite linear. I was surprised. I was expecting to see a massive change here that coincided with the change in the government, and we do see that a little bit. There's definite uptick here at the end of 2024, which would have coincided with a massive increase in program from Kāinga Order, and then it has flattened off quite a lot in 2026. But when you step back and take a sort of a multi-year view like this, you can see that there has been a relatively consistent delivery of social housing over that period of time. So I was all ready to get very, very angry and point political fingers at this, but then I actually, it was actually quite an interesting graph to look at the long-term trend.
Yeah, but as you say, Matt, you're probably stuck in design for 2 years for a social housing development.
Well, that's right.
And then you're easily on site for another 2 years. So,
yeah. So while
these projects have been in the pipeline for a while.
That's right. And while it is subtle, you're right. Any small decrease in the slope of this line has massive effects because it takes a long time. So this rise here was the uptick of Kāinga Order delivery, which was a substantial increase in houses delivered. I think at their peak they were doing 5,000 houses per annum on average, just prior to just around the time of the last election. So really interesting stuff. You should check that out. It's a pretty interesting dashboard to interrogate and have a look at. I'm sure there'll be a lot more to talk about with social housing. It's not an issue that's going to go away very quickly. Yeah. All right. Hey, I don't want to keep you guys for too much longer, so we're probably not going to get through everything. But I think probably the most important, let's come back to overheating because that's going to come and bite us this summer for sure. But I do want to, well, I don't want to, but I feel like we should talk about H1.
Again. Go on, Matt.
I've gone through various stages of denial and anger, and now I've come out the other side realising that not everyone has been necessarily fully aware of H1 in the last 5 years that maybe we have, because they're suddenly realising that as November rolls around, they might have to change the way they've been doing things. So November is the end of the transition period from version 4, version 5 of H1 to version 6. Have I got that right? I think so. And I guess
you mean the transition to drop the schedule method is what you're talking about.
Yes. And there are a couple of other changes in there as well, which you probably don't ever have to deal with, Sharon, because they're not things that you would normally do. But so the other big one is the assumption of timber framing fraction in in walls, which will now be 38% as the default timber fraction.
I don't think many people are actually aware that there's been this assumption of 12% timber, and the minute you go up to 38%, you lose 22% or 20 whatever percent of insulation. I don't think most people are aware of that. Did you get that, Matt?
You disappeared for a minute.
I went offline. I don't know what happened there.
Was it something I said? I don't think most people are aware that we assume 12% timber, and I don't think people are actually aware that the more timber you put in your walls, the less insulation you've got. I know that's fundamentally sounds like a dirt moment, but I don't think most people are aware of that.
No.
They don't even think about it.
No. What are your thoughts on timber fraction, Glenn?
Yeah, well, I mean, for many years we've been trying to strip it out as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we're a little bit broad-based with the reasons for saying, we might say, just take out all dwangs and don't do this and don't do that. Well, actually, it's dependent on each build.
Yeah.
Because, dependent on cladding and things like that, you're going to potentially you might need to have dwangs for a certain setup. Obviously, you can suggest other ways like structural cavity battens and things like that. But really, what is the whole picture? You can't just say less timber, let's take it all out. It's going to be all fine. But where you can, why not?
So what you're actually saying, Glenn, is let's just energy model it.
Yeah, pretty much, because
great idea.
That's and if you need an engineer, you might be in a wind zone, or you might have a cladding that requires something. So it's most architects will pick that up, or designers. So, but I think when you go to, if you're talking timber frame rather than SIPs or something like that, I think it's easy enough to do. And I would always, for a timber frame, I would always like to see plywood on the outer edge, because it's robust, it's good for bracing. It protects me a little bit as well as the builder, and then surface cavity on the inside. Air tightness.
Yeah.
I think from a practical point of view, the timber framing issue, because most buildings have prefabricated frame and truss, that there's a general, I'm going to probably shoot myself in the foot and say there's not an appreciation from that side of the industry of timber framing content.
Yeah.
They think it's this nice, pretty thing that you ask for. But the reality is, when frames arrive on site, if they have a huge amount of timber, and if you're a conscientious builder, you're cutting it all out. That's extra man hours.
Which is bonkers, because then you're paying for something and then spending time.
I just think it's not that different. And I've had a conversation about this recently, and I don't think it's that hard to introduce the concept nice and early. It's like California.
No, but frame and truss guys don't want to talk to architects and designers so much, and yet they're sitting in this amazing place where they could make the difference to this without everyone without it becoming an issue, without it becoming a huge admin.
Yeah, so, I think there's more knowledge around it. I think that we did one just out of Nelson, and that's a pretty small plant, and was really easy to get what we required there. It was.
I'm talking about common practice, though, Glenn.
Yeah, I know. So I suppose talking about common practice, and then there's the edge of just having I guess as a builder, why not start learning about that? Because the builder can quite often make that difference with the truss, truss and frame and truss factory. But if it's not actually detailed anywhere, they're not going to do it.
Sometimes it is detailed, and they still do it.
Well, then the frames need to go back. It's kind of simple. And it sounds hard ass, but it's simple, but it's not convenient. But the point is, if they haven't done it as per the drawings, the drawings are the contract, don't they?
We need more
Sharon,
builders like you.
did you see or have a chat to Comfortech at the Passive House conference?
No, I didn't.
Pink Bats.
No, I didn't end up by getting around that way. Too busy talking.
So first of all, I think it was great to see Comfortech, which is essentially Pink Bats, at the Passive House conference, because we like to criticise some of those incumbents. But one of the things they've been promoting for a while is the secondary insulation layer wall solution, which they have. In fact, I might just share this again because there's some quite cool stuff here. If I can find the right tab, here we go. So this is, it's not rocket science, but it's stuff that they're promoting as basically a internal layer, similar to what you were just describing there, Glenn, with a secondary layer on the inside of 45 battens with an extra 1.3. But more importantly than the total R value, that cuts up a lot of the thermal bridging as well. And I quite like this solution as a mass market solution, because the more I look at the typical building site, which I often do and take photos and then post them, I kind of realize it feels like a bit of an uphill battle. And I think it feels like we can make some suggestions with, fewer studs in corners and taking out the odd dwang or horizontal brace here and there. But there's so many jack studs and so many double top plates and all the rest of it. I just feel like we're on an uphill battle to get that down to a level where it's going to make any significant difference. And so where I'm leaning towards now is saying, bugger it, do what you're going to do in the wall, but do something like this. Add another 45, either on the outside or the inside. And in Auckland, Climate Zone 1, I think just adding an extra 45 mils is probably enough. We're not talking passive house here. We're talking just half decent homes. But I think that would be a significant improvement on performance without asking builders and designers to massively change their standard practice.
Yeah, at the risk of suggesting something that, might be a step down from passive house.
Yep.
You could actually use your plasterboard as your main air tightness product, depending on climate, right? And you seal quite nicely around there, and you can get boxes too. For the plugs and things that you can airtight. So, you'd think that your plasterboard's fairly airtight, wouldn't you? And then
it should be. A sheet of plasterboard it's the joins and the cracks and the
holes that people make in later.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's just being sensible about those. You can buy product for that. You could even seal the base of the board as well.
Yeah, and you can also, if you're designing new, you can try and minimise how many services you put on the external walls.
That's right. So designing, it keeps coming back to that one, doesn't it? Designing, modelling. It does. Yeah.
And it's not hard.
No.
You just got to think about it.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Think about it early. Yeah.
External corners. I talk about that all the time, but it's a slow hanging fruit.
Yeah.
You lose so much heat through those external corners. Why? Because of the scheduling of when you can't reach the insulation after the building paper's on.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm probably more concerned about because the overall R value, and I'm thinking more in Climate Zone 1 here, is kind of yes, it's going to make a difference, but the bigger concern is that thermal bridging, and that's the thing that I does concern me when you see these massive gaps in three-stud corners, and then the building wrap goes on, and there's a massive thermal bridge there. It's a geometric thermal bridge, but you've extenuated it by having all that timber, and that's locked in. It's locked. It's going to be there for the life of the building, and that's the other reason why I think a solution like what Comfortech is proposing is something that every builder could do straight away, and it would go some way to reducing that thermal bridge.
Yeah, I worry that, and purist here, but I worry that it become a band-aid that people rely on. So it is a step in the right direction. It's really positive, but we still need to address taking out unnecessary timber members in our wall framing and our reframing.
Or doing trusses in a completely different way, Sharon, or using SIPs or
using OSM 3604 and keying into panelized people who understand this kind of stuff. The solutions are out there, and the people who know what they're doing are operational with this kind of stuff. So
I feel like you just dropped some jargon there, Sharon. OSM 3604. I know what it is. Glenn, do you know what OSM 3604 is?
It's technical stuff.
Have you, Sharon? Have you interviewed Johan?
I have not, and it's on my list. He's a busy man. I'm trying to lock him down. Well, also Simon Cater is going to interview him on his podcast, so I'm really looking forward to that.
I've interviewed him recently, and I think he's appeared on the Passive House podcast as well. So
yes, great.
OSM 3604 is kind of what it sounds on the box. It's a version of 3604. So it's not an official standard, but it's more of a registered sort of trademark, a clever name, but it's emphasizing and promoting a standardized methodology for offsite manufacturing. So it's
a design tool.
It's a design tool that tries to emulate the standardization you get through 3604, but instead of stick frames, it's looking more, well, it could be stick frames, but it's more looking at panelized systems and SIPs and those sorts of things, and say, what would this look like if it's, could there be a repeatable standard and a standard where ideally, ultimately, councils could just sign off on that, and all of the scheduling that goes along with that. So it's exciting stuff. It's a great idea.
He's done an amazing job. He's done a phenomenal job on it. Yeah.
And there's plenty of that happening, and there's been quite a lot of that happening off-site manufacturing for years, right? So there's plenty of people doing it.
Yes, there is, but there's also still a large portion of off-site manufacturing, because I've been in that space, who just still do minimum code compliance stuff, just on speed.
Yeah, so that's one issue.
Yes, there are innovators, and there are people who are in the performance space, but majority of the off-site construction still just does minimum code compliance stuff. Unfortunately,
building crap in a factory is still crap.
Yeah.
Well, and so that's one issue, is that prefabrication off-site manufacturing doesn't guarantee better performance, but it definitely makes performance easier under controlled conditions. But the other issue is that there's a lot of different systems out there, a lot of people reinventing the wheel and producing non-compatible systems. And this is trying to sort of bring the whole OSM industry, or bring the whole industry towards an OSM solution or set of solutions that are more compatible with each other, so that you can have cassettes and wall panels and stuff that work happily together, rather than just having to have one proprietary system.
There was a lot of work that was done in the offsite space to try and collaborate and get some terminology and get a register of all of the offsite players, whether a sector or core group. Unfortunately, with the change of government, the funding got pulled, but there was some incredible work. So hopefully that gets picked up at some stage, because I think, to your point, is there's great people working. There are good players, and to Glenn's point, there are some really good players in that space. But if they're not known about, and they're not on a registry, and there's no idea of compatibility with them with other manufacturers, it's everybody just operating in isolation on their island. That's hard.
Sorry. I think it's also, you might have the greatest idea in the world, but if the cost point is too expensive, people just aren't going to pick it up.
Yeah.
So you might talk about all the speed element and it not getting wet and a whole bunch of things. But if it's 15, 20% more, some people might not want that. Some people might understand that that's worth, spending. But if you can do both, then you're pretty much onto a winner. And the other thing that kind of, just as we're talking, is we're talking about insulation within frame. And so external insulation is like, I think there's a challenge there around product that is affordable in that space, but also, who's doing it well and how they're carrying it out, because then you're going away from all the issues. But again, it needs to be modelled and it needs to be, it's not for necessarily every situation. So you have to check it out for your climate. But I think there's potential there, but products are so expensive, rock wool and things like that. Traditionally, again, I'm no expert in this on the cost of it, but traditionally, last time I looked, it's quite expensive. And then wood fibre, no one's really doing thickness required, so maybe a combination.
Well, we import so many of our building products. I think it's up to 80% comes through or from Australia. And we have a monopoly on a lot of really large, manufacturers here in New Zealand. So, building costs are unreal.
Yeah. I know we do. Some people bring in Gutex and I can't remember the other wood fibre insulation now.
Yeah, what is it?
But so that is available, but it's very expensive to ship around insulation. And I am aware of a product from Knauf for external insulation as well, which looks quite promising because it comes with a weather membrane laminated to it. It's basically mineral wool with a weather membrane, and it's specifically for external insulation. And I think that's ultimately where we want to push people. And I think that's a way better solution to keep the bones warm. But I feel like that's introduces some additional complexity for designers and builders to get their head around, because then they're worried about how to do the cavity and fixing the cladding through to the battens, which is all resolvable. It's all those problems have been solved and been done for decades overseas. So it's not hard to do. It's just hard to get the industry up to that state.
Yeah.
Well, we have a system right here. It's called Parker Wrap that John Davies
is. Yeah, I was just about to say, John Davies.
We have it here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry, Glenn.
And that he uses wood fibre insulation quite often with that, I think, or mineral wool. I think it's sort of can use either.
Yeah.
All right. So coming back to just before we wrap up, summing up on H1, the default was, I think it was around 17%. I can't remember exactly now, but it was pretty
12.
low. It was 12. Was it really that low? Oh my gosh. Which is bonkers, because we know from the report from Brands and Beacon Pathway that it's not uncommon to have nearly 40. So the new percentage assumption in H1, unless proven otherwise, will be 38% of timber, which is a massive amount of wood. But it effectively is not going to change anything, because what they have done is said, we'll just reduce the reference R value. So what it's effectively going to do is mean that people using the calculation method are going to have a calculation that reflects more reality, but they've actually reduced the threshold effectively. So they've said you have to use 38% timber, but we'll make an allowance for that by just reducing the amount of the minimum R value of the wall. So at least it's reflecting reality more, even if reality is a bit more crap.
Yeah, and
At
I
least
think
been honest.
the other
It's
thing
being
is,
more honest. Yeah.
that they're saying like a 2.4 wall or whatever, and then there's the reality of the install, which is quite often a little rat shit. So um, so you have to
Yeah.
keep on top of those people. Not everybody's going to do that.
Yeah.
Then we might have steel beams and portals.
Yes.
So a combination of a shit ton of timber, beams, portals, bad installation. What are we actually looking at?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds cynical, but kind
Well,
of
it's
like,
really. I mean, that's reality. And I've been playing around with energy modeling a fair bit recently, and it's quite illuminating when I'm showing somebody like a designer, and I'm sharing my screen and walking them through how the energy modeling works, because I'm trying to explain some options to them, and you get to the part where you do the assembly calculation, and it's made up of the layers, and in that it shows where you put in an R2.8 bat, but the effective wall insulation, the effective R value of the wall might be as low as 1.8 or something, or even less, because you've allowed for that timber. And I've seen the surprised look on people's face to say, when they realize that that's the actual R value of the wall, is massively lower than the number on the packet of insulation that they're paying for. And that's purely because of the proportion of that wall that is insulation is potentially less than 30, 60%.
Well, 12 to 38% is 26%. That means that we've been assuming a quarter. I won't phrase this properly, but a quarter. Basically, we've been honest and we've been overestimating by a quarter. 25%.
And to Glenn's point, that also assumes a perfect installation, which we know never happens in the first place, especially once your sparky and your plumber's been back to site. Which I experienced just recently doing retrofitting a wall, which was a fun experience, because I insulated it 3 times. The second time was because I realised I hadn't put a drainage plane between the insulation and the directly fixed cladding on the outside. And the third time was after the plumber had come back.
So you're talking about that little 20 mil gap behind the weatherboard?
No, I'm talking about all of the. That for the drainage plane. But the third time, it was when I came back and all of the insulation was lying on the floor.
Or pulled out from under your floor joists,
but the
or
pipes
not laid
were
back
beautiful.
in your ceiling
The
board.
pipes were very nicely laid.
Yeah. They look perfect. There's no room for insulation. They were brilliant.
Yeah, they were very nice. All right, hey, I think we're out of time, guys. So we've gone over the hour. So I've taken up lots of your time, but I appreciate it.
No, it's been good.
No, yeah, enjoyable.
Well, let's do it again. Really keen. And if there's anything else particularly you want to cover off in the coming weeks, please let us know. Anything apart? Well, let's just remind people about your book, Sharon. Where are you going to have or have you already had a launch? Are you going to have any events to promote it?
No, I've just quietly published it, and it's on the website. Then I will. Yeah, no, I'm no big publishing party. But it's available for purchase. And then, as I said, I keep talking about this, but I need to do a podcast on it. So yeah, that's been on the to-do list. I just need to find a spare 5 minutes. So yeah. And
just remind people where your website is.
So website www.smartlivingspaces.nz. So on the 1st of September, the blog will be released about high performance, what is really high performance, and 4 questions to ask to find out if your home or that you're building or buying is high performance. And then there's also a tab to purchase the book, Babe, Let's Build a House.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Glenn, have you got a website yet?
Trying to get them up. No, I'm sort of helping other people, really. So I'm doing a bit of work with Ben Ayres from Hibernia.
Nice.
And his product is he's getting more and more of that out there, and he's built his own little shack at his parents' place actually too that he's living in. So
awesome.
That's quite a cool story, and just helping people. There's a couple of people I'm talking to around Passive House in Canterbury as well. So that's all good. And there's something else that'll come out of the weeds in the coming months.
Nice.
Can't say too much now.
Nice.
Nice tease, Glenn. Nice tease.
Awesome. Hey, well, great to chat to you both. Thank you for that. I'm not sure when we'll be back. Hopefully soon, because I'm away for a week or two. Going to go down skiing in Mount Dobson.
Nice.
So yeah, as soon as we can, we'll be back and catch up again.
When Matt makes himself available, right, Glenn?
Yeah. You guys talk without me. That's fine. All right.
See you, Glenn.